Welcome to the EMBR.ACE Education Podcast, a space for curious conversations about learning, well-being, and how we continue to grow in and beyond education. As we come to the end of this month, we want to take a moment to connect a few important strands that have been running through our conversations this month. We've been talking about learning, not just as something that happens in school, but as something that shapes our whole lives. And in our discussion with Effie Kyrikakis, the general manager of the managing director of Startup Ventures, we've been talking about growth, resilience, and well-being. And in that conversation with Effie, we also explored women's empowerment and what it really means to keep growing in systems that often ask women to adapt rather than be supported. So today is about learning to learn, but it's also about who gets to keep learning, how and at what cost. First of all, let's start with the idea of lifelong learning. One thing that neuroscience has made clear in the recent years is neuroplasticity, the ability of our amazing brains to keep changing throughout life. Our 86 billion neurons can connect and reconnect, create new connections, new paths for learning, and new memories throughout our lives. And we keep learning through experience, through challenge, through reflection, and through meaning making, definitely not through learning by heart, learning long texts by heart. But learning, so what does that mean? It means that learning doesn't depend on ability only, it depends on context. What context is conducive to learning? Motivation, safety, agency. And they all shape whether learning continues or shuts down. So here's the question that's really worth sitting with. Why do so many people stop seeing themselves as learners when school ends? And are they learners while at school? Well, one reason why we shut down is because learning has been framed as performance, speed, and getting it right. So rather than creativity, curiosity, exploration, and growth, we get to being perfect. But if schools are serious about developing lifelong learners, this has got to go beyond slogans. We need to help our students develop cognitive flexibility, and this needs practice. What is cognitive flexibility? It's the ability to adapt, to shift strategies, to think differently, and it doesn't develop in rigid systems like the ones unfortunately existing all over the planet. How can schools support cognitive flexibility? First of all, we can value multiple approaches to a problem. Instead of expecting the right answer against the wrong answer, we can look for different possible options to questions that we ask, and we can very easily now create such questions in LLM programs like ChatGPT. We also need to allow learners to revise thinking and not just get to the final answers. And we need to design tasks, and we need to design tasks where uncertainty is part of the process, because learning how to adapt is just as important as mastering content. And this reminds me of something we do with NeuroLearningPower, which I think is a key part of the training. During the NeuroLearningPower training, there are 2 time points where educators who take part are asked to be evaluated. Now, this process brought me in front of something I did not expect. I had thought that 4 months of training would have supported educators to develop a more open approach towards evaluation, would have helped them develop a growth mindset towards evaluation, because I knew that they were coming from a stress burdened ecosystem where evaluation was seen as a threat. What I realized soon was that no, they were not ready to see evaluation as just feedback. Why? Because they were bringing the collective trauma of exam taking. It was amazing to see very successful managers, school managers from all over the globe crush under the burden of being evaluated. For me, it was a shock. First of all, because I did not realize it. Obviously, because I was also burdened with the same trauma. So I redesigned part of the training in a way that empowers participants to make mistakes, to risk saying an answer without being sure that it is right, to risk making mistakes. What I call a collective exam trauma is something that has been bothering me for a long time, and research points out that across the globe, significant instruction time is diverted towards test preparation. In a specific USA state, in North Carolina, approximately 1/3 of teachers spent over 60% of the school day preparing students for state tests. And doesn't the same happen in exam preparation in language classes? So the intense focus on test preparation and test performance often leads to pedagogical shifts away from creativity and curiosity, and towards methods designed to maximize scores, and that's all. So drill and practice, teaching to the test, and an interesting approach by Jorgensen characterize this as a sit, get, spit, forget model. And don't we often realize that our students forget everything that they had learned during their exam preparation time after the exams? Why? Because critical skills like researching, debating, elaborating, improvising are neglected. And the pressure creates significant stress not only for students but for teachers. As research at the University of Liverpool suggests, stressed teachers resort to psychologically safe, but unfortunately outdated methods, often resulting in even greater reliance on drill and practice methods. What does this mean? It means that psychological safety is not just a soft extra. That's why one of my most favorite activities with my learners is I ask them to answer a question with as many wrong ways as they can. The brain learns best when it feels safe enough to take risks. So how can we support our learners as educators? It means normalizing mistakes as part of the learning process, or as Sir Ken Robinson famously said, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. Also, we need to reduce shame around not knowing. It's perfectly all right. The moment I realize I don't know is the moment I start learning. And we need to create classroom cultures where questions are valued. So if you're an educator or if you're interested in education, may I ask you to ask yourself, how often do learners experience school as a place where it's safe to struggle, where it's safe to make mistakes, where it's safe to not know? Because without that specific safety, curiosity and creativity simply disappear. You might have heard Sir Ken Robinson's famous TED Talk on how schools kill creativity. In my opinion, things are not black and white. I think that schools possess both the potential to limit creativity and the capacity to nurture it. The challenge for educators, policymakers, communities is to identify and expand the practices that foster creative thinking and curiosity while reforming the practices that suppress curiosity and creativity. Because in a world of accelerated change, like the world we're living right now, creativity and curiosity are not just nice to have, they're essential for individual fulfillment and for collective progress. So how can we teach learners how to learn? One of the most powerful things we can do as educators and schools can do is to help learners understand themselves as learners. Metacognitive skills, in other words. And what do metacognitive skills involve? Reflecting on what helps one focus, what helps one learn. Also, it means recognizes emotional responses to challenge, and it means developing strategies for persistence and self-regulation. These are not just soft skills, they are life skills. They travel with learners long after exams are forgotten. And in NeuroLearningPower training, when I often ask attending teachers about their own learning experience, so how about doing it now together? So may I invite you to take a few moments and think about your own experience with learning. You might want to consider a specific learning experience that you've had, and it doesn't need to be simply academic. It could be something you learned doing, a new language, and so on. So when learning becomes difficult, what's your instinct? Do you lean in or do you pull back? And were you ever taught how to learn, or were you just expected to cope? Your parents or your teacher said, just study, and you learn it. Well, these skills don't come from nowhere. They are learned. If they can be learned, that means they can be relearned. Now let's shift the focus, because learning is not neutral. It's shaped by power, it's shaped by expectations and social roles. And this was a strong strand in our conversation with Hiro. Many women grow up learning that they should be competent early. They should be prepared before speaking, and they should not take up too much space. It's very common to hear women apologize for speaking a little more in teams, in NeuroLearningPower teams. So learning for women becomes tied to proving rather than exploring. So let me ask you, how many women do you know who feel allowed to be beginners, to not know, to be not perfect? Because I've been mentoring women educators and women in business for a very long time, I have come across 3 myths that I would like to bust with you right now. Myth number 1, I need to be fully ready before I step forward. In reality, confidence often follows action, not the other way around. As I often say, trust the process. Myth number 2, being capable means saying yes. Unfortunately, this is a belief, an internalized belief that many women carry. But saying yes all the time, being constantly available, means not empowerment, but exhaustion. So remember, for anything and everything that you say yes to, and you don't really want to say yes to, or you might want to, but you have no time, no resources, you're saying no to something else that's important to you. It might even be your own health. And myth number 3, changing direction means I failed. But neuroplasticity means that growth often requires unlearning before relearning. Not disappear on their own. They need to be challenged, and they need to be challenged collectively. That's why NeuroLearningPower is a team mentoring method. Now, I remember another very powerful idea from our conversation with Hiro, which was empowerment is not about becoming more. It's about trusting yourself enough to keep growing. What does that mean? It means choosing learning that nourishes, not just advances. Ira talked about listening to podcasts, reading books, allowing curiosity without the need to justify it. Because letting go of the need to be exceptional, to be worthy, allows deep learning. And that's deeply human. So it looks as if learning to learn is not just an educational coach. It's a well-being issue. It's an equity issue. And for many women educators, it's an empowerment issue as well. We and our students feel allowed to keep learning. We keep becoming. And that matters. It matters in schools. It matters in work. It matters in life. Now it's time to go. But before we do, we'll end as always with our embrace game. May I invite you to take these questions with you and keep track of them while you're going about your daily business. When has learning helped you reconnect with who you really are, not just what you do? What kind of learning feels nourishing rather than demanding right now? And what's one belief about learning or success you're ready to let go of? That's the hardest one. So, are you ready? I'm firing. Before we do, let me share a little story with you. I have recently met better, because I used to know her before, an amazing educator who is also a managing director in a school. And I invited her to a NeuroLearningPower event, a well-being for women event, the event she leads that we run twice a year. She said, I really appreciate what you do in those teams, in those groups, and I really look forward to joining you. But right now, it's time for learning. There will be time for well-being later. And at that moment, I thought of the question I'm asking you as well. When has learning helped you to reconnect with who you really are, not just what you do? What kind of learning, I wanted to ask her, and I'm asking you, feels nourishing? What kind of learning feels nourishing rather than demanding right now? Before I ask you the last question, I want to share another little story. A few months ago, I was contacted by a very dynamic young woman who wanted to improve her English oral ability, speaking skills, but also her English language skills in general. We started together, and a few days ago, when we were starting our session, she came with a question. She said, Effie, I think we should stop the lessons. And when I asked her what she meant by studying, because I know that she listens to podcasts, she does she developed the exact skills that she needs, just not in the traditional way. So when I asked her what she meant by studying, she said, look, this is the first time I've made a list of words to write them down and say them by heart so I know them. Now, that's a belief that comes from very long ago. A belief about learning and success. Learning means hard work, and success means being perfect. So which is one belief about learning and success that you have and you're ready to let go of? This was my last question, and may I invite you to sit with them, to sit with these questions, and because they're really worth your time. So, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to the EMBR.ACE Education Podcast. If something in today's conversation stayed with you, take a moment to sit with it. Learning doesn't end when the episode ends, or at least that's what I hope.